What's going on, everyone? This is Dusk Demon coming at you from Scarlet Shadow Gaming. Today, I want to discuss a little bit of the custom GPT I'm working on. It is known as Master of Realms, as you'll see on the screen here. This is part of the custom ChatGPT's custom GPTs, and I want to basically the goal is to create a tool that can supplement a DM or enhance the DM's toolkit really. It can do quite a few things already, but I am definitely looking for people to help test it and to try it out and help me with some feedback and review and try to see if we can make it better. It can create all new worlds. It can generate contents, NPCs, generate maps, all sorts of stuff. I'll go over the total configuration that I have. Um, I have put a discussion, a thread in D&D Beyond. If you are a part of that, you can always come here and find Master of Realms, ChatGPT DM Assistant. And here you'll see the same thing I just said, basically my goal, what I'm working on, and the configuration that I have so far. Me and a friend have been testing it a bit, and we have determined that handling combat is very finicky. It does like to, or did, I haven't tested it since I've done these latest configurations. And we're going to do some playing around with it here in this video. But it was doing a lot of, during combat, just rolling for everybody, assuming what you're going to do, so on and so forth. And it kind of ruins the whole experience of it. It wasn't that it wasn't amusing and fun still. It's just part of the aspect of playing D&D is that the players still get the role. And it is very useful if you want to play, like, say, solo D&D, or maybe just with a friend. You can play as both a DM and a player. And during certain aspects, it is very useful, very fun, very intriguing. It does a, again, very good job on world building. It's very descriptive. Like, it's impressive. um I don't think we're in an environment, well, a stage, not environment, that it can fully replace a DM, but as a tool to help a DM, absolutely, positively. That's a little quirky thing. If properly built, a custom GPT that is configured for what you want it to do, in this case, enemy stats, world generation, quest generation. It can help build your characters and whatnot. Um, Communications between intelligent encounters and NPCs, as well as help with session prep, give you recaps of sessions, periodic recaps of the story and key events to keep them informed and whatnot. All of that are just excellent tools. And of course, I use ChatGPT and other things on the internet. I look for feedback. Well, I'm looking for feedback now, but I was looking for just what people really look for from a DM and what tools could possibly enhance that. So that's where we're at with this so far. As for the feedback and suggestions, in the D&D Beyond and in the link of this video, I will have this form. You are welcome to come in here, give me some feedback. If you want to be put on a newsletter to get information of future changes and whatnot, it will be here. I will note that I do believe you still have to have a pro ChatGPT account in order to access the custom GPTs. My friend was not able to access it, which is very sad. So if you have a friend that you can join on Discord or video call or something and play around with it, you're more than welcome to, if they have the pro license for ChatGPT. At some point, I may even look at building a custom GPT, well, custom AI that does this. Maybe even get it embedded into Discord, which would be kind of cool. But that is very much future plans. But with that, the link to the GPT is also right here in D&D Beyond in that thread. And of course, you can always reply to this thread as well if you don't want to use the feedback and suggestions form. It's just I'm going to get notifications from that, and it'll be easier to add you to a newsletter if you wish to stay informed. But for now, we can go ahead and start doing some more discussions of the Master of Realms GPT. So if you'll look at the screen, I currently have 4 tools to start conversations with this GPT. First being starting a new D&D campaign with a focus. This says on a focus with mystery. You can change these to whatever you want. So you can just use these as an example, but instead of mystery, you could say horror or fantasy or whatever you really want to say. You don't have to click this. Once you're actually in, you can use this to generate an adventure log. Even if you can't click this, you can always just say, hey, generate an adventure log of the last session. Give me a summary of the last session. Give me a summary of the EXP and loot of this encounter that we just completed. Stuff like that. Help me with NPC dialogue or a tavern scene. These can be starter ones. I'll probably change these to be more a starter of what you can do when you first initially access this, because these disappear once you're actually into a session, once you start using it. So these will I'll probably looking for suggestions for better tweaks. Creating a map for the upcoming dungeon, not good unless it knows what the story is. So the only one really good here is probably this one. So the other 3 will probably look to change. But it will always help you with NPC dialogue. So as part of your campaign, if you have it generate NPCs, maybe it's a village elder, a blacksmith, shopkeeper, a guard, whatever it may be, you can have NPC dialogue. And basically the player tells you what they want to say to this NPC, and you tell the NPC, hey, give me NPC dialogue between so-and-so blacksmith, and it can also generate the NPCs for you if you wish, and then players can interact with them at a later time, and you can always call back to that NPC. It is supposed to remember everything that it's ever done. It does update its memory periodically so that it does remember things when new content is generated or your choices, which can affect the campaign itself. It is designed that player choices will affect what happens. It will even ask players what they wish to do next, whether it be after in a specific encounter, after a specific quest, maybe they're going through the woods. I do probably want to show you what the current campaign I'm playing around with has done as an example as well. But for this, I do want to show off just the starting a new D&D campaign. I'll go ahead and click this. Right now, it's going to generate a setting, the starting location. Players can then provide this GPT with their current level and their class, and of course race, whatever stats they give them, the GPT will remember. Should remember. Let's clarify that. And it'll use that information whenever necessary in the future. And it's supposed to also query you if ever it needs that information again. Also, at the beginning of every new session, it should query the character's current level and classes. Or, yeah, in case they multi-class. But it's going to give us a camp. Not only is it going to give us the setting and starting location, but it's also going to give us a potential campaign hook, as well as key NPCs. So we have Alara Moonshadow, which is a village elder, Gideon Thorn, which is a local hunter, Lila Fairweather, which is an innkeeper. Adventure log. I will keep a detailed log of key events, discoveries, and important decisions made by the players. And then it's going to give us an initial quest. So the DM can take this information. They can, in Roll20, D&D Beyond, make their key NPCs. They can get the location and the setting. If they wish to, from here, they could have ChatGPT start generating more of the world. They don't have to immediately go into the initial quest. So maybe they want to know more about it, or they can be very secretive, maybe the DM's going to learn about the world just at the same pace as the players. Either way, once you're ready, you can jump into this initial quest, which says Elaria has requested that the adventurers investigate the ancient ruins located deep within the Elden Wood. She believes that the source of disturbances might be connected to these ruins. The journey will be perilous, filled with unknown dangers and secrets waiting to be uncovered. And then it's going to have first session goals, which is you meet with the Alara Moonshadow to receive the quest. You gather supplies and information. You begin your journey, locate the ruins, uncover the first clues about the dark force threatening Ravensbrook. And then it's going to prompt you. Let's start by gathering your character details. Please provide your character's current level in class and any other pertinent information you'd like to share. Once we have that, we'll dive into the first session. So for this, rather than do that, let's say we want to generate more of the world first. The world, and well, we probably don't want to get more campaign details yet. Give me details on the nations, important locations, kind of give us a world map. So now it's going to give us a world overview of this campaign. So now it's got the nations of Elaria. You have the Kingdom of Arathia, Empire of Thelora, the Duchy of Viridia, Republic of Galandor, Free Cities of Vandar. And it's going to give us information of each of these, as well as important locations, Eldenwood Forest, Ravensbrook, Blackspire, etc., etc. And now it says it's generating a map, but if whenever you tell it to make something while also giving it stuff before it, it won't actually generate it. So you can now say, generate me a world map. Now, this is where it's going to be probably problematic, because most likely what it's going to probably try to do is put these locations on the map. And if you've ever used ChatGPT, you know words are problematic. Just like that. So we can bounce this up. And these are nowhere near. So that's Galandor. What were the others? Yeah, it just threw all these on there. So what you can do in this case, which I really hope they can fix this in the future, a detailed, what would it be? A 2D map, right? 2D map. Maybe even topographical. But give me a detailed 2D map without locations. Let's see if it can do this. I haven't tried this one yet. It is much better at generating concept images than actual finalized images. This isn't bad. It does look like it was trying to put some in here. But with this, at the very least, a DM can go and start putting their own pins and everything on this, whether it be through Roll20 or Canva or Photoshop, whatever they may wish to use. Which, by the way, Canva, also a really good tool. If you're not using Canva, even the free version, as a DM to edit photos, I don't know what you're doing. Give it a try. So now that you have your map, you have your locations that you can pin, you have information of all the different nations, you have the general first session information, you could now give it your character concept. So you can either create one, Roll20, D&D Beyond, whatever you want, and give it the information here. You could probably even upload a Word or an export. It might be able to read PDF copies, or I would say PDF copies at the least. I don't think it would be able to read a picture. But either text-based is always going to be your best friend. So if you can do text-based, it doesn't need to know all the values of all your skills and everything. It doesn't need to know all of your abilities, because you're going to be focusing on that. But focusing on just like a normal NPC stat block, name, race, maybe include a backstory. I recommend it because it does really make world building more fun, especially if you have it generate the world after you give it the character information. So if you do this in reverse order, give it all your character informations and their backstories, and say, give me a world where these backstories would kind of fit in, or even have ChatGPT generate backstories for your character based on your character's alignment, description, background choice, any information you want to give it. Use that to generate a backstory, and then feed those backstories and character information into this. You don't even have to use this one for those character things. It'll just tell it any ChatGPT to use D&D 5e, and it'll understand the rules and concept of what you're trying to do and help you generate that backstory. Once you have that character information and backstories, you then can take it, put it in here, and then have it generate the campaign and world around those backstories. And that'll help create an even more rich environment for your players to play in. I keep looking over here when the camera's right here. I'm just reading stuff over here as well. But once you have all of that and you're ready to go, you're in your session 1, you can now start using ChatGPT to actually play. And in which case it would start asking what you want to do. In this case, players, they're starting, where does it say they're starting again? Campaign begins in the only tavern in Ravensbrook, the Black Raven Inn. The inn is cozy yet dimly lit establishment with a crackling fire in the hearth and the smell of a hearty stew filling the air. The mood is tense as villagers murmur in hushed tones about the recent disappearances and the ominous omens. Just that one paragraph sets a tone of the setting where you're at. You can go into more and ask it how the players got there. Maybe they're from Ravensbrook. This is why having the character backstories in ahead of time can really help meld the story and the campaign with their backstories. How did they get to Ravensbrook? Why were they there? Maybe they came from their respective locations in search for work, and they heard about Ravensbrook and the issues that they were having, so they all showed up. Why did they choose to work together? I don't know. Play around with it and figure that out. But once you have all of that in, you're off to the races. Play around with it. Learn how it works. Learn its quirks. Figure out how it can best work with you as a DM. If you want something changed or you think it could do better at something and want to see if it can, feel free to message me, fill out the feedback request form, and I'll try. I will generate whatever I need and configure it if I need to try to make it work. We can test it out some more. I want this to be one of the most used tools or most utilized tools for DMs, especially ones that aren't as talented at generating their own world and content and encounters. There are people out there who are masters of DM, like Matthew Mercer, they have an entire team really that creates a world, and he creates amazing products and worlds and encounters, and it's amazing. Well, not everybody can be like him or the various other DMs that are just like him and just as talented. This, I'm hoping, will help bridge that gap. Even if it's just 5-10% of a bridge, it would still be a useful tool in that regard. Now, I did say I wanted to show off a little bit of what it has done in previous campaigns, other than almost killing me very quickly. But that is partly my fault because I did fail to inform it of very important things. But like I mentioned, I put my character and its backstory in here, but I failed to give it my stats or anything like that, which I should have done. But it did know that it was going to be a solo adventure, and that I may request NPCs to help, or I may pick up other people. And it was able to just jump right in when I said somebody was joining, so it was perfectly fine with that. And it can help you figure out how they join. But it generated the world setting and the campaign plot points, the various acts and everything of the story. And then it gives me the adventure log, which, yeah, that was actually basically what it ended up setting me up for. And then I said, let's just start by session 1. And it gives you a narrative. The issue I had with the narrative part was that sometimes it spoke for you, and that part I didn't like. And that's something that I'm hoping the latest configurations possibly fixed. But if not, we are definitely going to be looking to do more. But even with that said, you can tell it what you want to say, and it will create a narrative based around that. So just because it gave you something before doesn't mean you can't have it alter it based on what you want to say. Another important tip is that if it does something wrong, you can actually tell it to alter it on the fly. It doesn't save it for future configurations used in if you do a new Master of Realms session, but like another Master of Realms, like you open up another chat. But it will keep that in its memory for this chat. So if you said, oh, I'm level 3, it's going to remember you're level 3 until you tell it otherwise. If you tell it that you have some special ability, like you're able to see in the dark and don't need torches, it will remember the fact that you have dark vision when you go into other areas. And it typically has been remembering, like if I had a torch or dark vision, so on and so forth, when I get into those areas to make sure that I can see. So when it describes it, it will give me the descriptions. And it's like, oh, your torch flickers and creates shadows across the wall as you traverse down these corridors of this temple. And so it's very interesting. It also does a really good job of offering alternatives to just combat. Oh no, the murder hobos are going to hate this. you can still murder them. You can still go directly into combat if you wish. But it allowed me, when encountering by bandits, I was able to intimidate them. And I was able to succeed. It even role played it out, narrated it based on what I rolled. So it interpreted what I rolled and determined an outcome right there on the fly for this encounter. And then, as you'll notice, it keeps prompting, what will I do next? So it doesn't just assume you're going to do something. It's going to prompt you or ask you. It'll give you like choices. And I'll show you that here in a minute. And these choices are basically in line with what you're currently doing. And it'll give you the option to move forward. So we'll kind of find that here. But also, like, especially when you investigate areas, it'll give you key points of interest, because I said I wanted to investigate the village. So it gave me key points of interest with some brief information about them. And then I was able to make decisions based on that. Right here, next steps. You can choose to 1, 2, or 3. To make it very simple, you can actually just press the numbers 1, 2, or 3. Or maybe you want to combine them. You can type it out. You can choose something else if you wanted to. Whether you choose one of these steps or choose your own or a mix of them, it will be able to interpret your wishes and move on from there. Now, the next issue that I really had, I think I already mentioned the fact that it likes to speak for you, is if you don't give it the information it needs, it has some issues in combat. Like if you're actually having it do the combat for you rather than handling it yourself via like Roll20 or whatnot. And I'll show that to you here. So this trap almost killed me. That was fun. But say in this case, a trap happens, and as a DM, maybe because it's a physical trap and it's shooting something at you, maybe you want to give your player a chance to react to it, even though they did step on the trap or trigger the trap. So rather than just taking the full consequences, I was like, hey, give me a chance to make a dex save to avoid the darts either completely or just half the damage. And it did that. It took that and went with it, and it allowed me to roll for half. And I rolled, I told it what it rolled, and then it proceeded. Well, actually, it rolled. And that's where the configurations that I've recently done, it's supposed to now query the user for the roll. So once the user then gives them that information, it will tell you, should tell you what the outcome is based on the DC that it set. The other issue was, like I said, I didn't give it my stats. It had no idea what level I was. So the main chamber of this temple, it was 5 cultists, 4 of which were just with crossbows, and the 5th was a leader, and he was a warlock, which I was playing as a warlock too. But, and what you'll find out later, which I had to tweak for this too, this staff was incredibly powerful. And I can't just assume the reason why I didn't die from this staff, because I don't know if it took into account the actual information of the spells this staff could do to determine that it couldn't hit me or affect the constructs of the defenses, but I'll get to that in a second. This staff, though, was insane, and the way it, I'm assuming, interpreted the use of it is the only reason I didn't die. But it also, at the time, made it where they were, I guess, locked in place, but somehow the defenses could still hit them. They could attack outside of the shield, and I could still attack through the shield. So the shield was really nothing. So I don't it it does some weird things like that. But right down here, it gave me options for my investigation for activating the defenses. And I discovered this central control mechanism, which lets me just flip some levers, which normally you would think that maybe you would need to figure out which levers to do based on the runes on them, but it interpreted that I was perfectly capable of just flipping levers to activate the defenses, and that's pretty much the reason why I won this fight. So the levers are activated, it tells you what the effects are. And then what I said is I stand by the levers and target the cultist with my Eldritch Blast. Its range is 120 feet and deals 1d10 force damage on a successful hit per target. At this point, I didn't know that it already had information on pretty much every spell. I could have just said I target with my Eldritch Blast and it would have had that same information. Now, it's because I said its range is 120 feet, made me think that maybe it assumed I was up to 120 feet away, is the reason why I wasn't targeted with this staff. But anyway, it's combat here. I was able to get it to do initiative, which I told it what my initiative was before this, and I've tweaked this since then. But it does combat rolls, and you'll see here it allowed me to take the attack after and on my turn, after of which it did everybody else's. You notice the staff, the spell deals 2d8 necrotic damage to the construct. Well, okay, interesting. And then here, it's was when it took my attack. But then in round 2, I believe, it actually rolled for me. The issue that I had with this is what happens if I didn't want to Eldritch Blast? Maybe I wanted to shoot them with my crossbow. Not likely, but just for an example. It just assumed what I was going to do. And it does interpret it. One other issue was it didn't actually determine at the start of this what the stats were for this encounter. So part of my recent configuration was to ensure that at the start of any encounter, it gives those stat informations, including their HP, their AC, their skills, abilities, spells, whatever it may be, and generate their inventory loot table, and like right there. That way the DM gets that information rather than it doing a combat situation like this. Because we want to play the game, not just have it tell us what we do. And it continues that numerous times. And it even lets me go, and once the battle's over, I was able to deactivate defenses and tell it what I needed to do. You do have to be careful with what you actually type in here. I did get a little flag here because I said that I wanted to that their death would be swift. So you got to be very careful. But here was the other issue, is that the cultists, I searched them for valuables and it gave me this stuff. Getting a magic staff, very very big. Magic robes as well. A magical amulet as well. At level 1, I'm getting 3 magical items in the treasures. It's a little much. So part of my configuration was lower the chances of getting magical items, especially rarer magical items. So common and uncommon, fine based on the difficulty of the encounter. But stuff like this staff, which I'll show you what it actually was later once my friend actually joined here and he appraised this item. It's insane. Also, the Hearthstone itself is absurd, and I'll show you that too. And it'll really drive home why I needed it to change this. But right here we have interaction with NPCs as well. But again, it communicated for me rather than letting the players communicate. And that was part of my latest configuration, is really trying to make sure that it allowed the player to dictate what they say rather than assuming what the player would do or say. So I really hope that people that watch this or test this out do test out NPC interactions, because I think that's going to be one of the biggest things. Here I do an adventure log for the first session. It gives you a place to insert the date, gives you key events, tells you what you secured and everything like that. It didn't give you a lot. It didn't just recap everything you got, so you would still need to take notes, which I would still always recommend keeping notes. But then here, end of session 1, DM notes, gave me notes for the next session, which prepare encounters and challenges for the journey to the Searing Sands. So with those in mind, it really helps DMs prepare. And here is where I added my friend. I told him they're level 3 human wizard, blade singer. I told him the background. Consider the world we are in and the current location. Come up with a backstory for this character and how I meet him. So here it generates a character backstory, which is actually very impressive backstory. And it really took that background and brought it in to this backstory. And then it showed how he met me in the current context, like where I currently was. And it allowed us to meet right away because I was already looking. So they were just in the town here. But then again, it just immediately went and just assumed what we said. So this is where your players could role play how they, once it says how they meet, your players could role play that. Moving on, this is where he detected magic and identified them, and it actually gives us a description of how he detects his magic. It didn't make us do any rolls or anything like that. I don't even remember if detect magic needs rolls anymore. But it detected the type of magic on each item, and then identify gave us the secrets of the items. And it took some time, but we determined that the Staff of Necrotic Power was the same as the Staff of Fire, just reworked for necromancy. It had Ray of Sickness, which was the 2d8 necromantic damage that it was doing, Animate Dead, and Blight, which, if it had targeted me with Blight, I would have been dead in one hit at level 1. But Blight only has that range of 30 feet, so that's where I think it assumed I was up to the 120 feet away and that it couldn't target me with Blight. And it also assumed I was too far away, plus it figured the defenses were more of a threat than me. So he just kept targeting them. Unfortunately, Blight specifically states in the spell description doesn't affect constructs, although Ray of Sickness says no such thing. It even knew of the attunement requirements. Now, all of these items that it created don't actually exist. Like, this was the rework of Staff of Fire. This is a rework of an amulet or something. It wasn't a robe of minor protection. It was something else, but it was still minor protection. This we could not find anywhere. So it does generate its own items, but it does appear to base it somewhat off of existing magical items. Although, again, I have no idea what it based this one off of. The Hearthstone, on the other hand, was on par with like a legendary artifact. and I had to DM discretion to require more than just a spellcaster of good alignment and to actually require a minimum spell level casting ability of like level 5 in order to use this thing as well. Like shield is sure, that's fine. Fireball, sure, it's fine. But teleport is a 7th level spell. A nobody under 5th level should have the ability to teleport twice per day, up to twice per day. So DM discretion made it where they had to have a little bit more. And that's also one of the reasons why this is more of a tool for the DMs to use rather than a complete replacement of a DM. I would be interested to see if somebody did just use this as a full-on replacement DM without ever telling it anything and just see how wild that campaign actually becomes. And if you do that, please share it with me. Like, let me know how it goes. I realize I'm probably talking fast, but I didn't want this video to go too long, but it's already 40 minutes, so I feel like it's kind of pointless to be talking this fast. Here, where we met a blacksmith, you could have required the players to buy equipment rather than the blacksmith giving this out for free. And this is where having it handle NPC interactions, specifying that you want to visit Torvin to buy equipment or visit the blacksmith to buy equipment would have been the way to go rather than just letting it narrate this. When it was time to get an NPC, because I did get an NPC helper, I told it to get the stats for this helper. It gave me their class, their level, race, background. Notice it did match the current level of the party. It gave me the ability scores, which it assigned, their skills, their proficiencies, and their features and traits, as well as their spells and equipment and personality traits even. It gives you pretty much everything as D&D 5e would have you build as a character. So then your DM could just take that, put it into a character sheet or an NPC sheet, whatever they wish to do, and you have an NPC. You'll notice along here, it asks us a lot of what we would like to do. Gives us choices and everything. Everything we do, they always ask, give us the next steps. So the party can determine what they want to do, tell it. Here I chose something different than what they had, and it immediately went on and created a new narrative for that. Now, occasionally you may see it just try to skip ahead and be like, oh, you have arrived at your location, which was several days away. You might have to say, hey, don't just skip several days, give me stuff in between there. You do that, and it takes you on the longest wild goose chase of your life. Everything you do always has an option for something else to happen. And that's where it got very amusing. Because we had an encounter. We went ahead and did this encounter. Oh, pardon me. Skip through that encounter. Right. This was also an issue it had. Because it actually gave us the stats of these wild animals at the beginning. Oh, where'd it go? Right here. HP 11 for the boar, 11 each for the wolves, and whatnot. This is what we wanted. DM can take this and put that on the Roll20 on tokens and whatnot and use that information for a combat. We didn't need to go further and start doing it in here. Because what we noticed after multiple rounds of combat is that these boars and wolves took almost twice as much HP as what their HP was, and we had to remind them. And once we reminded them, the next encounter we had, it did a better job, and it told us when we actually downed the enemies. And I can't say it was perfect, but it was much closer. Also, after the combats, it did actually give us a decent overview of the conditions of the players. So here, Elaria, the ranger, was the only one that took damage. So it told us damage taken, what it was, and options for herself to heal, which we did say that we wanted to give her a chance to take a short rest or heal naturally. And then again, next steps. Well, you'll notice we said we wanted to explore along the way, which we just tested it, and we just said 2. Said we continued. Exploring along the way gave us another encounter. Cool. We like encounters. That's what we play D&D for. It allowed us to interact with it, which this was, I believe, an altar or monument. So it allowed one of our characters to interact with it, attempt to gather more information. And later on, he even attempted to identify more objects, which we got another magical item and a elixir of health and some magical scrolls, which again, magical items. But then he decided to activate the monument, which it required the checks, and it interpreted his checks once we gave it to him. So it actually did what we were looking for. And this is what we're looking for when it comes to actual like combat eventually, if we wanted it to actually handle combat with theater of the mind rather than using maps. It would always query each user what their role was. Whew, pardon me. So skipping through here again, it even has effects of having partial activation. It's like it did say something about there being a chance of something happening, like it might draw unwanted attention. So we stated that we go on high alert but continue tracking. And it gave us footprints that we found during an investigation. So we followed them because, another encounter. Came across the campsite where we found even more stuff, which was actually very relevant to an upcoming event because we found something. What did we find? Yeah, we identified the items that we found, one of which was a tome, which was a grimoire of ancient spells, which was just absurd. For a wizard, getting access to 3 free spells to add to their spell book this early, but also rituals, was also absurd. And we didn't take time at this point to learn the rituals, which is kind of regrettable because the very next encounter, which by the way, these rituals were very impressive, and we didn't read them until later. But the encounter that we came across ended up being against a treant forest guardian. Now, we see this 138 HP, plus 10 to hit, 3d6 plus 6 bludgeoning damage. We basically assume we're going to die. Because even at level 3, 3 of us in the party, that's going to be a terrifying fight. So we attempted to use diplomacy because that's one of the options it gave us. But notice here, use rituals was an option. So it took this item that we found and had actually appraised, identified, and put it as an option in this future encounter. And this is where I really was impressed, because I didn't think to use these rituals. I thought they were too powerful for level 3, and I was like, oh, we probably can't learn these right now. But I think one of them was possible, and it was the one necessary to communicate. And here we told it to let Elaria handle it diplomatically. And it says, okay, roll the persuasion check. Remember her modifier is +3. This is why I say if you give it your stats, which you don't have to give it all the numbers, but if you were to give it the actual character sheet with stats and all the numbers, it could remind you. I still think that's probably better off in the hands of your actual players rather than in here, but it is an option. And if you want to test out that functionality and let me know how it goes as well, please let me know. But when she failed her diplomacy, Seth went up and informed him that he was attempting to restore the altar's protections, the different monuments that we encountered in the woods. He tried to restore them. He succeeded on one, partially succeeded on the other. And the treant rolled a insight check. Well, had us roll for an insight check. And we told it what it was. It didn't feel like he was lying, so it accepted it and actually gave us a blessing for 48 hours. So it interpreted this check and determined the outcome of that encounter based on that check. And then we were able to move forward. Then it got us to day 3. We got another bandit ambush. Now, just for fun, I decided to see what would happen if I said, out of curiosity, are these the same bandits that Ardent met before when he first started his journey? The narrative's like, hey, I'm going to adjust this. I think that's a great idea. It would be interesting twist to re-encounter the same group. It adds a layer of continuity and potential for dynamic storytelling. So it went into that. Recognition, recognized Ardent, immediately went into initiative because it wasn't going to give me the option of doing an intimidate again. It's just like, we're just going to go. And here, it gave us the AC, HP, their weapon, and their damage modifiers. And let us then roll for initiative. Almost the perfect aspect of combat in ChatGPT. Almost perfect. Because it still had some issues where it rolled for us, I believe, later down the line. It did do a really good job on this one, handling the stats, the HP. But you'll also notice here, I rolled a 7, Bandit 3 rolled a 9, but it had our initiative orders switched. I'm trying to see. Yeah, it said you can choose to attack with a longbow or short swords, and I just said her attack is... Oh, I informed them what the AC is, and it redid the combat round based on that. Which I suggest before combat, if you're using this for combat, to always tell it what your AC is. And if your AC changes during combat, if you're using combat rounds through ChatGPT, tell it when it changes. Like if you cast shield and your AC increases, or you take cover, tell it so it knows that for future reference. And then here was another instance of how we were impressed. We wanted to test what would happen if we just say what the character cast. So Seth cast Green Flame Blade with this attack roll with a 26 to hit for 8 damage from the sword. The second attack is a 9 to hit. You notice here, Green Flame Blade effect. We never said what it actually did. We just said what the name of the spell was, and it was able to look that information up and give it to us. The fire leapt from the target to another enemy, dealing additional fire damage. and then it rolled the damage for us for that. I'm fine with that to streamline it. But then here it rolled my attack and damage. So it was almost perfect. It was the only time I think it did it in this one where it rolled my damage and attack rather than let me choose. You'll notice it keeps asking to let me choose. So combat is very slightly problematic, and hopefully we can get that figured out and tweaked just in case people do want to do combat through ChatGPT rather than using Roll20 or other map software. It also did do pretty good at keeping track of when we actually downed the enemies and who downed them. Like right here, 11 damage to the bandit, bringing him down. And luckily this time it did give us a well-crafted item that was not magical. It did finally assume that we had had too much magical items. Now, it would be impressive if further down the line it could learn enough based on what your character was. If we could prove that it's learning anyway, based on the difficulty of being able to win versus your players, if it would increase the difficulty of its encounters. So if you get a chance and you want to test out the combat rounds in ChatGPT directly and see if it actually will increase the difficulty over time, I would love to see that too. It did summarize all the items that we got and detailed another step, another little side quest that we can do. And then we also had it tally all of the experience points for the entire session that we did. So basically when you do this, it looks for the session start. Basically when you said, let's start a new session, and then it calculates the EXP for everything since then. And they were close. I mean, the treant obviously would have been, like, if we'd killed that, that would have been insane amount of XP. But because we only role played and did diplomacy, and of course activating the monument, resourcefulness, and investigation, it gave us additional XP based on that. So it gave us a total of 750 XP for the session, and even divided it among all the party members. And that's where we stopped for this session. So with all of that in mind as guidance and examples of what it can do, I would love to see some comments on what you think of it so far. Please use the feedback tool if you as well, especially if you get a chance to use this ChatGPT, well, this GPT. I would love to see how your sessions and interactions go. If anything funny comes up, please get some screenshots and send them my way. I would be very interested in seeing how things go in your own testing sessions, or even if you choose to run an actual campaign with players using this tool. I would love to know how it's going. But with that in mind, this video has been going on for quite so long. I do appreciate anybody that does watch this video and anybody that did stick around for the entire thing. This is my first time really doing something like this. I love D&D and I love working with AI. I use it for work, I use it for school, I use it for just personal fun stuff. It does a really good job for writing narratives and stories and campaigns and world building. And I would like to see this tool become something useful and fun and enjoyable for everyone. So I would really appreciate your help with that. But with that, I want to thank you once again, and I will see you again next time.